What would you do if your own neighborhood association tried to sell your property without your permission? This isn't just another story about a pushy HOA, it's about betrayal, retaliation, and the moment I turned their little scheme upside down. If you want to hear how I flipped the script on people who thought they owned me and my cabin, stick around till the end, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping stories of justice served. It all started on a crisp Saturday morning when I was sitting on the porch of my log cabin tucked away in the woods, sipping coffee from my chipped mug, staring out at the golden sun cutting through pine branches, feeling proud that after years of sweat, debt, and stubborn persistence, I finally owned this place free and clear. No bank, no liens, no strings attached, just me and my cabin on my land, my sanctuary from the chaos of the city. But peace rarely lasts when you live under the thumb of an HOA. The Homeowners Association that had been a thorn in my side since the day I moved in, an HOA that believed they had the right to dictate not just lawns and paint colors but even how often one could chop wood, what kind of fence you could build, and when you could host guests, and I had fought them off again and again, refusing their fines, beating them in small claims court when they tried to charge me for things not in the covenant. But I never expected their next move, because when my friend Mark, who works in town, called me breathless saying, "Hey man, did you know there's a real estate listing for your cabin? It's online right now," I nearly dropped my coffee, hard hammering, because I sure as hell hadn't put my cabin up for sale. And sure enough, when I pulled it up, there it was. My cabin, my porch, my firewood stacked neatly by the shed, all photographed as though it were some shiny commodity up for grabs, listed under a realtor's name with the HOA's stamp of approval, calling it a rare rustic opportunity, and my blood boiled. Because I never gave anyone permission, I never signed a thing, so how the hell was my property being advertised like it was theirs to sell? And as I scrolled, I saw the kicker. There was an open house, scheduled for Sunday, less than 24 hours away. People were literally being invited to come walk through my land as though I was already gone. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a mistake, this was a power play, a sneaky attempt by the HOA president, Linda, who always looked at me with her sharp eyes and fake smile, telling me once, this cabin isn't really in line with the community vision, like she thought she could wish me away. But now she'd taken it further, and the rage that welled up inside me turned into a cold determination, because they wanted a show, so I was going to give them one they would never forget. So that night I got to work, first by dragging the heavy steel gate I kept stored by the shed across my driveway entrance, bolting it shut with a padlock thick enough to hold back a bear. Then I hammered up a new sign on the wooden post by the road, painted in bold black letters against a bright white background so nobody could miss it. Private property, not for sale. Trespassers will be prosecuted, and beneath it I added in smaller red paint, HOA fraud exposed here. Ask me how, because I wanted every car that slowed down curious about the listing to know something shady was happening, and then I set up my trail cameras, making sure every angle of my driveway and yard was covered. Because if they were going to send strangers onto my land, I was going to capture every second of it. But I wasn't finished yet, because I wanted to hit them where it hurt. So I called up a buddy of mine who writes for the local paper, a guy always hunting for small town scandals, and I fed him the story, every detail, every screenshot of the listing, every HOA email I had saved from over the years showing their harassment, and he was practically salivating, saying, "This is gold, man, absolute gold. I'll have a reporter there tomorrow," and knowing the press would be on my side gave me even more firepower. So when Sunday rolled around and I heard the rumble of car tires up the gravel road, I was ready, sitting in my rocking chair with a fresh cup of coffee like I was waiting for a show. And sure enough, a shiny black SUV pulled up first. Out stepped a realtor in heels, sunglasses, and a fake smile, clipboard in hand, followed by a couple dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine, clearly thinking they were about to tour their future mountain getaway. But when they saw the locked gate and my bold sign, confusion spread across their faces, and the realtor frowned, muttering into her phone, pacing like she hadn't expected resistance. But before long, more cars showed, a minivan, another SUV, people looking around curiously, some annoyed, some just nosy, and that's when I stood up, walked down to the gate, and addressed them loud enough for everyone to hear. "This property is not for sale, folks, never was, never will be. You've been lied to by the HOA." And I watched as heads turned, whispers spread, and one guy even laughed nervously, asking, "Wait, this isn't an open house." And I said, "No, this is trespassing if you step foot past this gate, but since you're here, let me tell you how my own HOA tried to sell my home without my permission." And I could see eyes widen, phones come out to record, and right then a local news van rolled up, cameras ready, reporter hopping out with a mic, and the realtor's face went pale, sweat glistening on her forehead as she tried to stammer something about a clerical error, but I cut her off, saying, "Don't lie now. We all know who orchestrated this. It was Linda and her little HOA board, and I've got the evidence to prove it," holding up the printed emails in my hand like a trophy, and the crowd loved it, murmurs of outrage rising, cameras flashing, people demanding answers, and just when it couldn't get juicier, Linda herself pulled up in her pearl-white Lexus, stepping out with her perfect hair and that same smug expression, though this time it cracked as she realized half the neighborhood, a news crew, and several confused prospective buyers were staring at her like she'd just been caught robbing a bank, and she tried to spin it, saying, "There must have been a misunderstanding, we were only exploring potential interest," but I cut her off again, booming, "Interest in selling a home you don't own? That's fraud, Linda, plain and simple," and the reporter shoved a mic in her face, pressing her with questions. The buyers started yelling about wasting their time. The realtor tried to slink away but was caught on camera, and the whole thing was turning into a circus, exactly how I wanted, because while they scrambled to defend themselves, my story was being told, broadcast live, spreading like wildfire, and by the end of that week, the paper had run a front-page article, the local news had aired the footage, and neighbors who once quietly bowed to the HOA's every demand started to whisper about rebellion, about recalls, about finally standing up, because they'd seen with their own eyes just how far the board would go. But the best part came later, when I got a letter from the State Real Estate Commission investigating the fraudulent listing, and another from my lawyer friend confirming that I had a solid case for damages against both the HOA and the realtor, and though the fight dragged on for months, every hearing, every deposition, every time Linda had to sit across from me in a courtroom, I felt a satisfaction no words could describe, because the tables had turned, they weren't in control anymore, I was, and eventually, the HOA board was dissolved under pressure from the community, Linda resigned in disgrace, and my lawsuit settled with a nice chunk of change that paid off every penny of maintenance I'd ever put into my cabin. But more than the money, more than the headlines, it was the principle, the fact that I showed them that a man's home isn't just four walls and a roof, it's his fortress, his dream, his life's work, and no HOA, no realtor, no smug neighbor can take that away without a fight. So when I sit on my porch now, watching the sun filter through the trees, I know one thing for certain. They messed with the wrong cabin owner, and they'll never forget it. So if you enjoyed this wild ride and want more stories where justice comes crashing down on the arrogant and the greedy, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from.